All right. And as Dakota had asked about this being a new notes document, it is. So when you download it and open Cami, you should not be prompted to open it this way. You should just straight open this time. All right. And, oops. You also need to go to Pear Deck from the assignment. Click that link. I'll get the Pear Deck link to you. Well, where is that code? Okay, there is the code. What are you doing here today? All right. All right, let's go ahead and get started. That code, of course, will remain there in the upper right-hand corner. All right, tort reform is about limiting tort suits. There are different ways, different strategies for tort reform. One is to put restrictions on the types of tort cases that can be brought to court. Limiting when cases can be brought. This might be like limiting the time after an event has happened for a case to be brought. And another quite popular variant of tort reform is to place caps on the amount of damages that juries or judges can award in tort cases. Especially in terms of somebody's non-economic harm. So, what that might be talking about is, let's say that Dakota, as our motorcycle rider, right, is struck by a truck driver, right, and wants to sue the truck driver for damages. Right. Tort reform might say Dakota can sue for disability. That means he can't work the way he used to. But if he has maybe some chronic low-level pain, it's not going to cover that. Right? And if he now has a not irrational fear, but a fear of trucks, right, and being able to be out on his motorcycle, right, he could say that he has suffered emotional harm that limits his ability to enjoy the activities he used to. Now, tort damage would say you can't get, or tort reform would say you can't get damages for that, right? Only for, say, physical disabilities that would prevent you from earning an income. All right. Now, in the Pear Deck, right, I want you to just throw me together a quick list, right, a 30-second list of who you think would want these kind of limits on tort suits. Right, who would be wanting this? There are no right or wrong answers. Who would want to limit tort suits? Okay. Yeah, well, and I don't take off for spelling, so you'll be all right. Okay, yeah, so corporations that might be sued for their products, right? Strict liability kind of lawsuits. Right? Also, politically, conservatives and Republicans do tend to be the backers of tort reform. Democrats take the other side. So in some cases, lawyers perhaps, although in a lot of cases, especially if you are, say, you're a Republican politician and you are a supporter of tort reform, you would say lawyers are the ones who don't want it. Because those what do you think? What's the derogatory term for personal injury attorneys? Anybody know this? You're on. Finish. Ambulance what? Oh, you were close. Nobody? Ambulance chasers. Right? Wait, you're going to be an EMS, right? So you better know this, right? Someday when there's that Mercedes or BMW 700 series flying down the road behind you, it's an ambulance chaser, right? They're going to try and sign somebody up for a lawsuit. No, I'm being a little facetious. But that's where the ambulance chaser slur comes from, right? So often Republicans will say that lawyers, right, and the Democrats that they support are ambulance chasers, and that's why they're opposed to tort reform. But yeah, people being sued, right, which might be corporations, right, drivers, judges, marriage counselors. Right. Who picked marriage counselors?
No,
You, Caden, you were just, okay.
maybe like, you sued someone because they didn't fix your marriage.
Oh, okay. It's not that you're wrong. I was just that I've never seen that answer before, and I wanted to know more. All right. Yeah. So typically not plaintiffs, but again, I guess there really are no wrong answers here. Okay. So one of the hints that I was tempted to give, but we actually ran out of time, and that's fine. The same kind of people that really need individual insurance, right? Lawyers, doctors, especially doctors. A lot of the discussion around tort reform gets back to doctors, business owners, the corporations that were mentioned in the first comment. For kind of an overview, I always do this anyway, just to kind of give people two different takes on this. But also, since we're all slowly dying in this sauna that is room 41, we'll let a video tell you. Is it any better for you, Bridget, in a cellar there closer to the window? Is it any more comfortable there? Okay, I wasn't so much jealous. I was just like hoping that somebody was mildly comfortable in here. All right, here we go. Well, maybe.
Tort reform.
Oh, we're back to Kermit.
Would seem
Sorry.
to require some definition for all but those steeped in the movement to achieve tort reform and those fervently fighting to preserve the status quo. So what is a tort? The word itself derives from the 11th century Latin word tortum, meaning injustice. Tortum, springing from the Latin word tortus, meaning twisted. Tortus, in turn, comes from the Latin word torquere, meaning to turn awry or to wring. In American legal parlance, tort means a wrongful act or an infringement of a right leading to a civil legal liability. Modernly, tort law is thought of personal injury law. Tort law has been part of the American legal fabric since the United States' establishment, having been adopted as part of the British common law system. And so, in legal and political senses, what does the word reform mean? When legislative bodies want to enact legislation altering a legal construct, like tort law, they often title a bill that way. For example, the Tort Reform Act of 2007. The fact that the word reform is in the title of the bill allows its proponents the opportunity to presume that the reform is needed or necessary. Its opponents might argue that the use of the term is clearly presumptuous, as in their view, the construct needs no reformation at all, or perhaps only the slightest amount of reformation. In fact, many of them call this movement tort deform instead. The tort reform movement has been in existence for many years. Its development comes from industries that are on the receiving end of tort lawsuits, such as medical malpractice lawsuits, and the insurance industry, which pays the vast majority of the costs when a personal injury results in liability, often champions this tort reform. Personal injury lawsuits, as with virtually all civil lawsuits, have two principal components, liability and damages. First, liability must be shown. That is, it must be shown that a duty existed and that the duty was breached, meaning that the duty of one person not to physically harm another person must have been breached. Second, to recover damages, it's not enough that liability be shown.
Sure. That's enough for that one.
Set aside by corporations and
okay. Yeah, so again, a lot of it is, you guys were right, it's doctors, corporations, and insurance companies. Now, on the one hand, I do want to say, we will look at tort reform and the debate specifically in the context of Texas, because Texas has done more on tort reform than I think virtually any other state. And we will have time to address the debate. One thing I want to say right now, so we can kind of balance the books on this a little bit. It's easy to think of insurance companies as evil, right? And corporations as evil for wanting to put limits on torts. But, right, how many of you pay an insurance bill every month, right? Or maybe you've got it set every 6 months. Okay, so several of you, right? Yeah, well, yes. When I was in high school, I will tell you, my parents also paid insurance. They got the worst end of the deal. I bought the car and they paid the insurance. They should have done it the other way around because, well, you might not know this, Claire, but I will tell you, being a 16-year-old boy, insurance is very expensive. Right? That's a whole different subject. But some of you pay that bill, and you will, I'm sure, in the future. If insurance companies have to pay out lots and lots of damages in suits, then we all have to pay more money in insurance premiums. Right? The same thing with corporations. If they have to pay a lot of money settling lawsuits or paying damages awarded by juries, the goods we buy from them get more expensive. This is one of the reasons that new cars have gotten so expensive. Some of it's just insanity. The new Jeep Grand Wagoneers, when they came out, if you've ever noticed, I kind of like those old Jeeps. I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool. Well, they start at $60,000, so no, I will not be getting one of those. All right, but one of the reasons that even if, let's say, Skylar tries to make a reasonable choice and buys a Ford Fiesta, right, that's nothing wrong with a Ford Fiesta at all. Right? It's going to cost more for him than when I last bought a little hatchback. Right? And not just because of inflation, but because since I last bought a hatchback, they now have blind spot detection. And backup cameras are required by the government, right? Lots of things that are meant to prevent incidents that cause torts have driven up the cost of even little inexpensive cars, or what are supposed to be inexpensive cars. So just a little devil advocate there. Now, in terms of tort reform, right, those doctors that were mentioned, they are a huge part of this. Medical tort reform is, if not actually the most active area of this debate and the policy struggle, it's one of the top. Now, we'll take two perspectives. We'll listen to a doctor explaining their point of view on this, and somebody else kind of taking more of a, not a disinterested view, but kind of a, I should say, they're at least, I think, trying to be dispassionate about it from a neutral point of view. The main idea is this, right? Healthcare is expensive. I think you were all probably aware of that at some level. Although, I'll tell you, how many of you know how much an MRI costs?
Oh God. Isn't it like over $500,000?
No, not the machine, but just like to get the MRI, just to get the scan.
I think it's like
You were right with not 100, but about 5,000.
Yeah.
But most of you didn't know that. How much would an open heart surgery cost? Actually, let's forget that. That's for old people, and you guys aren't old yet. How much does it? Well, you'll get. I mean, like, I hate to break it to you, Bridget. Like, the clock's ticking on all of us. We all started dying the moment we were conceived. So, like I said, that's my job as a social studies teacher, is to make you sad. All right. How much does it cost to have a compound fracture treated and cast? Anybody know? That's something that happens to you young people. You do physically active things and you get hurt.
about like $2,000,
$2,000, $3,000?
Depending on like where you got it.
Okay. Well, so there's some of that. But, all right, how much does it cost to get, how much does a value meal cost at Wendy's? $4. 4 for 4, all right? How much does a McChicken cost at McDonald's? Okay. You guys actually know that stuff, right? Why do you know that stuff? And okay, so part of it is that you like food, and you actually, I'm hoping in your life you have had more McChickens than compound fractures, right? That's not a statement about how fantastic a McChicken is, right? But compound, what though? I know I used to eat quite a lot of those when I was a busy grad student. Yeah, it's kind of gross how many of those I've eaten in my life. But you guys know that, not only because you consume them more often, but does McDonald's tell you how much those things cost before you buy one? Yes. And same with Wendy's, right? You wouldn't, I don't think that Justin would roll the dice on a trip through fast food if he's like, if I buy a hamburger at McDonald's, it might be $1, but if I buy a hamburger at Burger King, it could be $6,000. Would you take that chance, Justin? No, you would not take that chance, right? But with healthcare, nobody presents you with this is what it's going to cost. Do you want all these things? Or should we just maybe see where we can cut some of the costs out? No, you just get it, and then you figure out how much it costs later. Now, a big part of the reason that those healthcare costs are high is because nobody really knows what they are. It makes less sense in St. Joe where we've only got one hospital, but in larger communities where they have multiple hospitals, sometimes that same procedure will be thousands of dollars difference in price. And people don't pick their hospitals based on how much things cost, and that's one of the reasons that costs are high. But defensive medicine is often put out as another major reason that healthcare costs so much. And what we mean by defensive medicine is doctors doing unnecessary things, unnecessary procedures, ordering unnecessary tests in order to prevent somebody from suing them. Anybody here ever had a bad headache that maybe lasted longer than any other headache you'd had before? All right. Okay, it happens, right? Now, if you go into a doctor and you tell them that you've got this headache, that doctor, chances are they just know, right? Maybe you've not been eating well and you've got some kind of imbalance in your electrolytes, or you're under a lot of stress. Any number of things are reasonable explanations for your headache, and it's nothing to worry about. Right? But, right, of the thousands of people they might tell that to, there's the off chance that one of those, right, has a tumor, right? Kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop, right? It's not a tumor. But actually, you guys, how many of you have seen Kindergarten Cop? You have. That warms my heart a little bit. It's a bad movie. It's terrible. But I'm glad that I'm not the only one that had to suffer. No, it's not the worst, but it was pretty bad.
Personally, Arnold Schwarzenegger is my role model.
Don't just, if you get a maid, don't do that. Right? That will never make sense to me. All right. moving on from Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So that one person actually did have a tumor, right? And the doctor didn't order the test, right? And maybe it's not that the person died, but maybe instead of getting the test right then, they got it 3 weeks later. Right? And that might not have actually meant anything in terms of the medical outcome for that person, but they now sue the doctor because the doctor, right, missed their tumor. Right? And so now, right, when Caitlin has one of those headaches and goes to the doctor's like, all right, we're going to get you one of those $5,000 MRI scans. Right? We're going to do all of the stuff. We're going to take some tests. We're going to check your white blood cell count, make sure you don't have leukemia or whatever that catches. I don't know. I'm not that kind of doctor. Right? And that's what we're going to do. Right? And all of that's expensive, which drives up costs. And so the idea here is if we cap those tort damages, then that would end defensive medicine, right? Or at least limit it. Okay. And if there's less defensive medicine, then the healthcare costs go down. All right. Now, as we watch the videos, right, just throw into the Pear Deck, right, just kind of like stream of consciousness kind of writing will be fine. What evidence supports this argument for medical tort reform, and what evidence undermines that argument? Again, no right or wrong answers. I just want you guys I want to see that you're trying to digest and process this information. And we're going to start with the doctor's point of view.
Almost every doctor at one point has practiced defensive medicine. And you know what I'm talking about.